We've got a great session right now, a great conversation coming up about the future of healthcare. So I'm going to introduce to you Elliot Fox, who's the Director of Healthcare at Stand Together. And in this role, he helps develop strategies to reimagine health across the Stand Together philanthropic community. So, and Elliot's going to introduce Congressman Smucker.
Thank you. Elliot. All right. Good morning. Hope everyone's had their coffee this morning, ready to talk about an issue that has huge implications for the direction of this country, and that's healthcare. I'm Elliot Fox. I'm the Director of Healthcare at Stand Together. We are a national network of nonprofit organizations and businesses focused on removing barriers to help all Americans contribute to society. And I'm honored to share the stage this morning with Congressman Lloyd Smucker, represents Pennsylvania's 11th congressional district, which includes parts of York County and also Lancaster County. I had to make sure I got the Lancaster pronunciation right. I'm a Virginian, so you got to be patient with me this morning. The congressman serves on the Ways and Means Committee, which is the committee in charge of tax policy in Congress, and sits on the Budget Committee as well. Before his time in public service, he also ran a successful construction company right here in Pennsylvania for 25 years. So thank you for being with us this morning, Congressman.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you. Thank you.
So just before we dive too deep into the weeds, just to kind of give some context for the environment we're operating in the healthcare space and how we got to this point, there's really no other way to put it than the left has basically been pushing an agenda for more control of our healthcare for decades, and really a century. And obviously that's concerning, but there are good spots in the healthcare system as well that we don't want to forget. We remain the world's leader in the development of new treatments, cutting-edge technologies. We have some of the world's best cancer survival rates, the lowest surgery wait times, so there's a lot to be optimistic about. But the reality is we've been really outgunned in healthcare reform for a long time, and we've been playing defense. Thankfully, I think we're starting to see some good opportunities to really turn the tide on that and play offense, and a lot of that is thanks to your leadership, Congressman. But let's start with the negative. Medicare for all. You've been, on the front lines of playing defense against ideas like that, or the so-called public option. How are those threats kind of on your radar screen, and how are you seeing that from your vantage point in Congress?
Yeah, thanks, Elliot. And you're exactly right in bringing up Medicare for all, which you haven't heard maybe a lot about in the last few months in regards to this being part of their agenda, but it is still there. I mean, it's absolutely clear that if you look back to the last presidential election, every major candidate endorsed Medicare for all. The majority of the Democrats in Congress have endorsed a bill that would provide for Medicare for all. And I think you framed it pretty well. We've been, in a broader scale, in terms of Democrat policy and the policy that we're dealing with in Congress, we've been on a slide towards socialism. Certainly in the last few decades, but you could arguably say we've been on a slide towards socialism for about 100 years. And we, by the way, saw when President Trump was in office, we needed someone like him, and he put a stop to that for a short period of time. But now it's back full force, and it's very interesting. If you look at the entire size of the federal government, and you see when some of these programs were started that contributed to the entire cost of the federal government, it was two-year periods when Democrats were in full control. New Deal periods and Great Society. Most of the federal government expense, most of the reason for our debt was done in those two-year periods, and that's exactly what the Democrats are trying to do right now as well. Make fundamental changes that are very, very hard to unwind. And healthcare, Medicare for all, is really sort of the front line of this move towards socialism that we continue to see. And socialism, by the way, it's either the government owning production or controlling it. And we're seeing a lot of that already in healthcare. We're seeing, it's amazing to me as a member of Congress, and I'm now in my third term in Congress, it's amazing to me how many discussions I have in regards to setting rates for providers for healthcare. It's unbelievable that we spend so much time on this. And I can't blame them. They need to be able to operate in the system, but there are many areas of healthcare where federal government is already controlling a lot of the setting of the pricing and production and so on. Medicare and Medicaid, both over half, or not, close to half of people in the United States are already on Medicare and Medicaid where prices are set. We made some progress some years ago before I was there when Republicans added something called Medicare Advantage, which brought more competition into the system. It's exactly the direction that we should be going. And I don't have a background in healthcare. I was a small business owner. So I can't say I'm an expert in healthcare. I serve on Ways and Means where we're trying to implement some of these policies, but I was a business owner. And just as you feel, and I'm sure people across the room, we believe in the power of the free enterprise system to drive innovation. To your point, we are the leader in innovations in healthcare that provide for better quality of life. It's because of our free enterprise system. And that's what we would lose if we move to Medicare for all. In fact, people talk about the system in Canada, talk about the system in the United Kingdom, and those that would advocate for government takeover of healthcare talk about them as being a great system. I just happen to have I serve on the trade subcommittee on the Ways and Means committee, so happened to recently have been in the UK, and we went to Wales and visited one of the steel companies there, and it was really interesting to me because, again, UK's brought up the government healthcare system really does well for advocates of it. One of the executives was saying, we work hard to keep our employees, provide great benefits. We purchase a really great health insurance plan for them. And I stopped him. I said, I didn't think that a company in the UK where there's a government system would be buying health insurance for their employees. He said, are you kidding me? He said, on this system, if you need a knee replacement, you're waiting 5 years. You're literally waiting 5 years in the UK for a healthcare system. So it really ends up being substandard care, and then it's a two-tiered system. Those who can afford it are the ones that can benefit from faster care and so on. So it was really interesting to see that firsthand. So our role is to look for innovative ways to ensure that we have more competition in the system. We have a lot of ideas to do that, to ensure that there's more consumer choice. People understand and are able to make their own choices about which insurance they want, which providers they want to use, which services they want, and they're informed consumers, just like in any other area. We believe, by the way, I just think competition in any area works. I was the education chair in the state senate when I was in the state senate, and many people in this room have worked on school choice, and it's not all that different. We want quality education for students, and we believe that choice and competition helps provide that. Same thing's true in healthcare.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it, and the education, I think, comparison works really well. I mean, it's really fundamentally about control. Right? Do we want control of our healthcare? Do we want to give that control to government? Right. It's a pretty simple choice. I want to turn more to some of those positive ideas that you alluded to and the innovation we're seeing out there. Before we do that, though, I want to make sure we just touch on kind of what we're seeing in Congress right now. Some of the threats that we're seeing. I think there was even a hearing last week because Medicare for All still looms out there as this threat, but there are still fights that we need to fight here and now today. What are some of the issues that you're seeing Congress debate right now that, frankly, would probably be stepping stones to Medicare for All? Well,
again, maybe in a little broader context, it's been interesting with this president. He talked about unity first in his inauguration, and then had the most progressive policies, and it's been literally in Ways and Means and Budget, we've had multiple hearings where we're pushing back against this socialism. And it's really class warfare from their perspective. It's Marxism. That's the path they're on. And in healthcare, in particular, they're talking about drug pricing, which again we by far, create more than any other country across the world, new treatments, innovative treatments that make a huge difference in the lives of people all across the country. That's done right here. And if you're going to control the price of drugs, which essentially is their plan, when they talk about negotiation, I should say, it's just drug pricing. It's setting the prices of drugs. And so it would kill innovation. And we've seen some estimates that you're going to see something to the tune of 100 new medications that are going to change people's lives not come to market if they would implement some of the pricing controls that they plan to implement. We do have drugs are becoming very expensive because we're seeing development of drugs that they're just expensive to produce. Going through the entire process is expensive. So we do need to make some reforms that ensure, we want to protect drug companies, but then we need to ensure that there's a limit to that amount of protection. You have to incentivize the development, incentivize getting reward for the risk that they take, because for every drug that comes to market, there's a bunch where they failed. And so, but then you have to have balance on the other side as well. But so their policies, I'll give you a really great example. I was on the train one day, and a doctor came up to me from Lancaster County, the county I represent, and said, "I can't believe you are against Medicare for all." Because he said, "I'm a dialysis doctor." Diabetes, by the way, is by far our largest area of cost in Medicare. Will continue to grow. It's one of the drivers of the massive increase that we're projecting in Medicare costs. So if you could solve diabetes, you're going to really impact the trajectory of our deficit and our debt and so on. But he was like, "I've served in dialysis for a long time. Socialized medicine works because if you need dialysis, you're covered by Medicare." I think that's the best example, honestly, of socialized medicine not working, because there are a lot of very promising, innovative treatments for folks with diabetes today that could end up being very inexpensive. We could end up curing diabetes. And we're not quite there, but very close. I don't know if you've ever been in a dialysis center, or maybe you have family members. It is not a good quality of life. They have to go into the center for hours every day or multiple days a week. And I'm glad that we can treat patients, but our system in that particular instance disincentivizes bringing new medicines to market that would be very great. So I think something like that is a perfect example of what we're talking about. We want policies that don't just rely on the status quo. We want policies that encourage the competition that will bring new treatments to market.
Yeah, I love that example, because I think too often we get caught up in between this sort of false choice of we've got to defend the status quo in its entirety, or we've got to throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? And instead, we can just look for common sense reforms that keep what works and fix what's broken. So I think that's a good transition to talk a little bit more on the positive, because we've been talking more about defense. I do just want to point out on that note, Americans for Prosperity, which is part of the Stand Together network, is driving forward on a comprehensive reform agenda right now called the personal option, because healthcare is personal. And the personal option includes specific reforms like expanding HSAs. So if you want an HSA, you can get one. You're not prohibited by law. Currently, only about 10% of the country can access one. Reforming administrative agencies like the FDA. So really excited about some of the progress on that front. Congressman, what are some of the ideas that you've seen that you think have the potential to really allow us to shift to go on offense in healthcare? Yeah,
it's a great question. There's a lot of good ideas out there. And by the way, I think your program, you call it the personal option, right, is I've looked at some of the bullet points on that and some of the way you view the healthcare space and some of the innovations that you think we should be making. I think it's right on. It really is about personal choice as opposed to government running the healthcare. You talk about, I think you brought up HRAs or HSAs right now. I've signed on to proposals that would expand the use of HSAs. In fact, the Fair Care Act is one bill that has been introduced in Congress. There are a number of them, but the Fair Care Act would take several of the programs that we have in place right now, like the flexible spending accounts, the HSAs, HRAs, and combine them into something in that particular case called a MediSave account. The name's not all that important, but a MediSave account, which would expand, allow larger numbers to be included, reimbursement. It's really a good option to for both the employee and the employer. It makes the health plan. This, by the way, this can be done as an add-on to a health plan that an employer would provide, or it can be the sole, for maybe smaller companies or so, it can be the only thing that's provided. But essentially, it makes health insurance more portable for an employee by making all of those expenses reimbursable, and in some cases allowing the employee to go out to the market rather than through the employer. So it'd be a really great way to drive that personal choice that we think is so important. That's just one idea. Again, we need to be, telehealth is another one. It's been fascinating to see. If you think about this like in a common sense way, you know, the ability to be able to call your doctor, talk to them on the phone, maybe look at a video on your phone. You can get your treatment, like, you know, you have a problem, a rash, whatever it might be, you can show a picture of that. You're going to get faster treatment. Like, people are going to pick up the phone rather than taking their time and going to the doctor. So for a long time, we've been saying you're going to be able to provide better care. It's going to be more efficient, less expensive overall. Patients are going to like it. And we've been unable to get that passed through Congress because of sort of the way the system reimburses doctors and the government's slowness to change that program. And then COVID came along, and suddenly we are forced to do that, as it changed other areas as well, but we're forced to do it. And we find, wow, this works. And now all providers are saying, this is something we really should be extending and making permanent. We've had a hard time getting that done. Yeah, we've had a hard time getting that done. Right now, we're in a 151-day extension. But why can't we do this? Like, why is it that we can't take a common sense change like that? And it's because government control over the system, the reimbursement program, the reimbursement rates and all that have to be changed. But government, unlike the free market, is very slow to change, and it, as I mentioned before, it drives down that innovation.
Yeah, that's a great point. And we're seeing that, you know, when we give the free market a chance, we give people choice over their healthcare, it works. So we should have more of that. So I think we could probably sit up here and talk about healthcare freedom all day, but I think that's about all the time we have. If you're thinking to yourself, this all sounds nice, but what can we do today? Here's where you can start. Go to thepersonaloption.com. Just take out your phone, personaloption.com. Click on the drop-down menu, and then what you can do today. It's just a simple thing you can do. Join the movement for the personal option. Find ways to make your voice heard in Congress, which, based on everything we've been talking about, is super, super important right now. But thank you again,
We appreciate your leadership on that, Elliot. It's a great program, and this is a lot about driving awareness and getting people involved and speaking out on this. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for your leadership,
Yeah.
Congressman.
Thank you.
Thank you.